Well, now to a disturbing case coming out of New York. A woman by the name of Lydia Cuomo is trying to redefine the word rape in the state. Last year, she was waiting for her ride to school on her first day working as a second-grade teacher. And that's when a drunk, off-duty police officer pulled up, pointed a gun at her, and then raped her repeatedly. Well, the perpetrator, the man you see there, former Officer Michael Pena, was convicted of forcing anal and oral sex on the victim. But not rape. That's because in New York, anal and oral rape is not considered rape under the law. Well, Cuomo says she believes, quote, rape is rape, and is using her experience to change the law in that state. And she told the Daily News, quote, I had witnesses, I had DNA, I had my own testimony, I had 2 cops. I had them saying, we admit he sexually assaulted you, and I didn't get the verdict I needed the first time. And that just highlights to me the problem in the system. For more, I'm joined now by independent journalist Amber Lyon. Amber, great to have you here in the studio.
Thank you so much, Liz.
So rape is rape. That's what the victim says, but not in New York. How is rape defined there?
Well, the problem is that in New York State, they only consider vaginal penetration to be rape. And in the case of Lydia's situation, she says that she was forced to commit oral sex and anal sex and considers that to be rape. But according to the law, that is just sexual assault. So right now she's seeking legal justification because you can imagine the horror she's been through. And now the courts aren't even recognizing that that's rape, and she's got to try to explain to people that it's only being considered sexual assault and not rape in this case. And unfortunately, Liz, this is the case nationwide in almost every state.
So New York is not unique in this?
No, only 8 states recognize oral and anal sex as being legally considered rape.
So what do they consider in those states?
Just vaginal penetration.
And so I guess just a form of sexual assault, or just not as serious of an accusation of rape.
And you can imagine these women, they feel like any type of assault to that extent, especially an anal assault, is rape. But the courts aren't recognizing that, and that's what Lydia is desperately trying to change in New York, for not only for herself and her own justification, but for future victims of sexual assault.
Can you talk about how this victim, Lydia Cuomo, is now trying to change his definition? What exactly is she trying to do to make sure that no other woman faces the same ordeal after already, you know, being under these terrible circumstances?
Well, right now she's boldly, and you can imagine it's very difficult for her to talk about this publicly, but she is coming forward, showing her face, showing her name, explaining that this happened to her, and she's headed to Albany to try to pass the Rape is Rape bill, which includes oral and anal assaults as being considered rape. And she's really hoping that New York State will recognize that those are crimes that make victims feel as horrifically as what they consider to be rape at this point.
Well, just this afternoon, the Senate passed the Violence Against Women Act. How does this bill address the issue of violence against women?
Well, for decades, the Violence Against Women Act has been key to not only offering support for victims of assaults, sexual assaults, and physical assaults, but also offering women a way to feel confident to come out and expose the perpetrators. And it has created key programs nationwide to offer support for these victims. And according to advocates, the Violence Against Women Act is responsible for reducing rates of domestic violence against women, also for increasing rates of women who feel confident enough to come forward and expose that they're being abused.
Right, and so we do see support in the Senate, but not so much progress in the House. What is the holdup there?
Well, the problem all comes down to rape and sexual assaults that occur on Indian reservations. What happened is that the Violence Against Women Act says that tribal courts can charge non-Native Americans for assaulting or raping Native Americans. And advocates say that this is needed legislation. They say federal courts are far. They need these tribal courts to really be able to prosecute these cases. They also say that if you assault someone, you deserve to be held responsible. And Republicans were saying that it's unconstitutional to try non-Native Americans in tribal court. So there was a holdup there, but it looks like those amendments are going to stay in the bill, and that this will pass with enough Republican support and Democratic support to eventually be signed by the president.
Of course, Native Americans, domestic violence is a huge problem among that population. So this bill does aim to help them, but it looks like that's the problem there.
Yeah, and if you talk to advocates, Native Americans, they're 2.5 times more likely to be assaulted, sexually assaulted, than average Americans. So this is a key issue that the Violence Against Women Act is focusing on this round, and advocates say that's a victory enough that this is being discussed.
All right, so a victory today. What do you think is in store for this victim in New York that's trying to change the definition of rape there? Do you think she'll be successful in her endeavor?
There are high hopes. So far, her team and supporters say that she is winning at this point because she's getting people talking about that. I don't know if you knew that that those forms of assault were not considered rape, but before I started investigating this case, I didn't know that so many states across the United States don't consider anal rape and oral rape to be rape. Even now, I'm calling it rape.
The vast majority of people, I think, would say yes, that is indeed rape. And Amber.
So she's winning in that case by just getting people to talk about it, and I think she feels successful in that matter.
Absolutely, Amber. Great to have you on here. That was Amber Lyon. She's an independent journalist.
Cops rape of a schoolteacher in broad daylight so horrific, he's facing life. Manhattan, CN. A former police officer who raped a New York City schoolteacher in broad daylight drew no sympathy from New York's highest court, which unanimously affirmed his 75-to-life sentence on Valentine's Day. Michael Pena, now 32, had been off duty on the morning of August 19, 2011, when he pulled his loaded and police-issued gun on a young woman. The 25-year-old was on her way to her first day of teaching in the Bronx, when Pena pulled her into the courtyard of an Inwood apartment building and raped her. Prosecutors broke down Pena's assault into 3 separate offenses in his indictment, with each carrying a 25-year sentence. Pena appealed to the New York Court of Appeals, the state's highest court, after a lower court upheld his sentence in 2015, rejecting the ex-cop's claim that this punishment was unfairly multiplied. Pena's lawyer Ephraim Savit has emphasized that his client's penalty is 63 years longer than the average rape sentence. If that disparity is not cruel and unusual, then perhaps there's no purpose to having the Eighth Amendment on the books anymore, Savit said in a phone interview on Tuesday. In unanimously upholding Pena's sentence this morning, the Court of Appeals noted that the Pena's counsel did not invoke alleged violations of U.S. and New York constitutions. Although defendant generally objected to the length of the sentence before the sentencing court, arguing that the sentence was draconian, he did not alert the court to his constitutional argument, Judge Sheila Abdus Salam wrote for the 6-judge court. Thus, the sentencing court was never given an opportunity to address any of the constitutional challenges that defendant now lodges with this court, she added. Read more. Isolated incidents? 40 cops in 30 days racked up dozens of charges of child rape and sexual abuse. Chief Judge Janet DeFiore joined the ruling, as did Judges Jenny Rivera, Leslie Stein, Eugene Fahey and Michael Garcia. Attorney Savit bristled at this reasoning. The Sixth Amendment now takes precedence over weight to give to it than the Eighth Amendment, he said in an interview. Another sentencing disparity in Pena's case involves that between the average U.S. sentence as opposed to other advanced nations. Image, http://pixel.watch/QUT7. Mark Maurer, the executive director of the advocacy group Sentencing Project, surprised many in congressional testimony last year by proposing an upper limit of no more than 20 years, barring exceptional circumstances, in the federal sentencing structure. That Pena had been a police officer when he committed his horrific crime likely contributed to his heavy sentence, but Pavitt asserted that international politics may have played a role as well. Just days after Pena's attack, New York City prosecutors were forced to withdraw charges against Dominique Strauss-Kahn because of evidence discrediting the hotel maid, whom the then director of the International Monetary Fund director had allegedly raped. Activists accused Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance at the time of blaming the victim. Savit suggested that this political climate created a tough posture in prosecuting his client, though this argument did not come up in Pena's appeal. Judge Rowan Wilson did not take part in the decision as he only joined the court in January. Judge Abdus Salam is the first Muslim woman to sit on the state's highest court. Read more at http://thefreethought-project.com/cop-facing-life-prison-raping-teacher-gunpoint-broad-daylight/#PKBPZOPW92GXRQTY.99